business is business, and that's how it is. I just try not to take it personally.
Mike, what the hell are you doing?
Well, I don't think that the first one set any sort of standard way of working that I followed, because the next film had considerably more money, and although it was still low budget, I guess I'd have to say that, you know, having a low budget mindset from well before I made my first feature film, you know, it's a good creative discipline. Even more so as I get a little bit older and have more experience and meet more people who have small companies, and now I understand the problems and the joys of running a small company, probably more so than I did certainly when I started making movies, because I have a small company myself and I have to run it. And but yeah, I appreciate having conversations with people who have maybe a small design firm, or maybe people who build radios or something. It's usually much more fun than talking to other filmmakers or theorists or something like that. The climate changes and changes all the dynamics of the assumed value of an artist's work. So, and you know, I'm not complaining, it's just that's the truth of it. And you know, I knew I would adjust the work, my expectations of it in a kind of product sense, and I would find the money somewhere, and I did. And you know, by and large, it's been a great experience.
You got blood on your shirt. Has Neo been back? Listen her. Miho is with a different guy every time I see her.
So she's lucky.
She's not lucky, man. She's loose.
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 What about me?
What about you?
Miho's been with me for 6 months. Hasn't strayed once.
So what?
You can have control and be not working. It's, you know, being a producer is this balancing act constantly of doing exactly what you want to do, but being realistic enough to know that you're going to have to make some compromises. And I guess if there's an art to producing, that's exactly what it is. So yeah, I compromise every single time. I adjust my expectations of the work and the way I want to work usually. I would like to work very slowly and without a set schedule. Well, that's impossible. That, you know, never happens. So I say, okay, I'll work that way and I'll make this film in a real tight schedule, and I'll make it with less money and whatever. I'll make sure that it's no longer than 110 minutes long.
I wish I could be more like you.
You don't want to be like me.
I mean, you just get up and go. You take charge of things. You're your own man.
Ned, I don't even know where I'm going.
That's what life's all about. The adventure, the not knowing.
No, it isn't.
I want adventure. I want romance.
Ned, there's no such thing as adventure. There's no such thing as romance. There's only trouble and desire.
Trouble and desire?
That's right. And the funny thing is, when you desire something, you immediately get in trouble. And when you're in trouble, you don't desire anything at all.
I see.
It's impossible.
It's ironic.
It's a fucking tragedy is what it is, Ned.
Yeah, I guess I just refuse to let it
So soon?
mean anything or change my
Let me come with you.
my assumptions about my work. I wouldn't want to be associated necessarily with a clique for the wrong reasons. I think if a person's experience and output encourages somebody else to do good work, or attempt to do good work even, that's great, and I'm happy to be used as an example. But it's hard to, I'd be careful to isolate or indicate a clique that I think I'm representative of, or anyone else for that matter. When I started making films, everybody would say like, oh, in the mold of a Jim Jarmusch or something like that. And yeah, well, it wasn't that annoying to me. I mean, being mentioned in the same breath as Jim Jarmusch was kind of swell, I guess. But yeah, I always thought, oh, God, he must be so embarrassed to, to have to now tug not only the weight of his own reputation and work, but of other people as well. And when I finally got to meet him many years later, we had a very funny conversation about that. Yeah, very much. Preston Sturges and Howard Hawks, those guys, their movies and their scripts really, I drew a lot from. Yeah, well, I mean, I think every filmmaker is really important. Howard Hawks got into the business because he liked airplane engines, and he was fascinated with airplanes and could build them and fly them. And then when he was still a very young man, he saw a camera, or a projector, I think, and just, it awed him. The beauty of the machine attracted him to it. And then somehow he became an assistant director, which in those days in Hollywood was a very different kind of thing. It was a very loose, it was much looser. So I mean, within 5 or 6 years, Howard Hawks was writing, producing, directing, sometimes shooting films. We'll never know. On some of his films, we don't know what he did on them. He had what seems like an enormous amount of autonomy over his work at certain times, and then somebody else came in and took over the studio and ran things differently, and he'd say, okay, yeah, but I'm Howard Hawks, and
When two images or sounds are juxtaposed in a relationship that is not concrete or logical, in terms of conventional perception becomes either obsolete or is obliged to reassess its intentions. Why does it look? What does it want to see? Does it ask to see only what reaffirms its own existence?
I think Godard vendors, these are sources that I go back to again and again and find inspiration and encouragement in again and again. So, I mean, in that sense, yeah, I keep going back to them. They're not always the films I want to watch every day. I like variety just as much as anybody else. But it is true that there are certain works and certain men and women who you find yourself being drawn to again, even their new work, to see what they're going to do and where they're going to go.
Wenn wir dem glauben können, was uns erzählt, dann hat der Filmemacher davor, die wechselnde Dynamik ein und derselben Situation in verschiedenen Milieus angesiedelt zu vergleichen.
Und du glaubst nicht, dass ihm das gelingt?
Ich weiß nicht, vielleicht ist es noch zu früh, um das sagen zu können, aber ich glaube schon, dass er scheitern wird.
Er wird scheitern. Er ist schon gescheitert. Doch in diesem Fall ist es ein interessantes Scheitern.
Halt doch endlich deine
Well, I always feel I'm
Das Leben
failing
muss
in
doch die Dynamik der Situation verändern.
in not owning up to
Menschen bleiben
what I really like about movies. That moment in Flirt, and probably one of the reasons I like Flirt so much, is because it really did not disguise its process at all, and that something is really happening when you're watching that movie. You're watching me make a movie, but you're also watching yourself assess the success or failure of that movie at the same time. So I like that, and I don't do that very often. I needed a very kind of experimental format to do that. And it was kind of frightening. I also do like a well-made, well-crafted story, and the way it's told. So, yeah, I'm ambivalent, and I think the ambivalence of wanting to just tell stories, which is basically a written medium, and then you just photograph the story. That's on the one hand, and then on the other hand, I have things that I guess you would call more experimental or more formal. And that ambivalence, that tug back and forth between these two poles, is probably what delineate, what makes the kind of film I make as a result of these things. Right. Yeah, I mean, if I have a stylist, a style, or if there's a Hartley stylistic or something, it can't be anything but the result of how I deal with what I feel are my failures, right, and how I struggle with them.
Fyodor Mikhailovich Dostoevsky. Born in Moscow, 1821. His father was a drunken brute of an army surgeon who treated his serfs horribly, so they murdered him by pouring vodka down his throat until he gagged. Fyodor had some success with his first novel, but then he was arrested for subversion against the Tsar. After 8 months in solitary confinement, he was led before a firing squad. He stood there in a death shroud, facing an open and hastily dug grave, awaiting his execution. Then someone decided he didn't need to be shot. So for the next 4 or 5 years, he did hard labor in some cold Siberian prison. It was there in Siberia that he began to suffer from epilepsy. Finally, 10 years after being dragged away in chains, he returned to St. Petersburg. He converted to a conservative and profoundly religious philosophy. Nevertheless, he was utterly destitute, an alcoholic, and a compulsive gambler. He married Anna Snitkina and wrote at least 4 of the greatest novels in history. I have nothing else to say. I can't teach you anything. Class dismissed.
I guess this particular ambivalence I was talking about, this not feeling entirely at home at telling the story without some reflection on the telling of the story. And, well, certainly I have what I consider a healthy disregard for the conventions of naturalistic storytelling. I don't really want you to lose yourself in the movie, in the story. But you know, I have a very high regard for storytelling in fiction, and realize that part of this fictive dream is essential. I mean, if I keep talking about it, I'll sound psychotic, and I guess it is. It's a kind of psychosis here. And you want to do two totally, radically different things. And the way that you happen to rope and tape them together somehow constitutes your style. I may have all these kind of ideas about what a great film is, and then I go out and I make a bunch of footage, and I start editing it. And, you know, my ideas take a back seat to the reality of the images I made. If there isn't an authority to the pictures and to the performances and to the creative gestures of any kind that I utilized, you can't lie about it to yourself. You have to say, well, okay, now I'm going to make a different sort of movie than I thought I was making. And I think that's probably true for any creative person working in any medium. I'm not afraid of letting process show, and process for me extends over the course of any number of films. And that period of time from 1991 to 93, you know, I made a lot of films actually, and a lot of smaller pieces, video pieces, and there were certain kind of graphic motifs that I found quite powerful, and like I didn't think I really did it well at the end of Surviving Desire, although on a certain level it worked perfectly. It was funny, ironic, but it really wasn't what I was after. And so you have another opportunity to do it, you know. Ultimately more interested in women. I mean, it has a lot to do with, I think, anybody who makes something, you know, you want to make something that you want to see. Yeah. I think the characters that I made, you know, in the beginning, like the characters that Adrian played, particularly in Trust, I mean, that was just something I wanted to see. I imagined this woman into existence, you know, just the kind of woman I would fall in love with. I mean, there is something that a film does. It tries to disentangle this fine thread of what is an exploitative watching from a respectful representation. I don't really have the answers. I mean, I think I tried to work it out in the film. I enjoy watching women. I enjoy creating women who attract me, too. I mean, people should talk about this with Trust, which is the one feminists really dig so much. I mean, that girl is just as created by a male attraction as the women in Amateur. It's just that I needed to look for different things at different times. I mean, separated by 3 or 4 years, I felt I had looked into one basket pretty thoroughly with Trust, and, you know, wanted to explore actually more things about myself and my desire to watch.
pretty woman.
She's got principles.
Principled pretty woman.
Kate ain't told a lie in her whole life.
Have you known her long?
For a while. Used to work with her ex-husband.
You mean the angry, dangerous, psychotic ex-husband?
Just hold on. Jack may be dangerous. He may even be psychotic, but I don't think he's angry.
How long have they been divorced?
Why, you looking for a wife?
I was just wondering.
2.5 years, maybe.
She been alone all that time?
I proposed to her.
Really?
As soon as I knew Jack was safely behind bars, yeah, I jumped at it.
You snake.
She won't have nothing to do with me, though.
No, huh?
Sometimes I think she just don't like men.
Bullshit, she likes me.
Oh, yeah, I bet all the girls like you.
What's that supposed to mean?
I gotta go.
No.
I get too emotional when I drink.
Have another beer.
Gotta get up early.
No, you don't. Sit down.
I get too emotional when I drink.
Will you have another beer?
I gotta go.
Why?
I gotta get up early in the morning.
Why? You're drunk.
And emotional.
You gotta go.
Why?
You gotta get up early in the morning.
Yeah, you're right. Here, have another drink.
I gotta get up early in the morning, too.
No, you don't. Sit down. Have the drink.
Go on, get out of here.
I have fun with the childish side of men and with being a man, like flouncing around in the mud, and, being childish and stupid, but at the same time truthful. I think with like Martin's characters over the years, we've had a great time. Oh, Bob Burke's too. I remember Simple Men. That was probably the kernel of Simple Men, being these silly men who, who could be perfectly correct in certain things. I identify pretty strongly with all of the characters. I couldn't really write them, the male and female characters. I mean, I couldn't really understand them if on some level, like I say, mystery, leads to attraction, but you can't really get anywhere in shaping a character unless you make certain assumptions. So based on your understanding of being a human being, you start to formulate possibilities for these people. I don't know, there's plenty of instances of things that, are just funny that I think anybody could relate to. I mean, a lot of the time, I try to reach for the things that I find are archetypal. But they really feel genuinely archetypal because, not that they feel close to me, but I recognize it very easily without having to struggle, without having to intellectualize something. It just feels very right. The shape of a character, the consequences of an action, the type of action. When I was a fourth-year student at film school, I was making my thesis film, Kid, and the lead character was called Ned Rifle, mostly because all the scripts I produced as films at film school, we wrote in class. I would write it, I had to read it in front of my classmates, and we'd critique it and work on it and whatever. And to keep things interesting through successive revisions, I would give the characters really silly names and funny names and ironic names, anything. We used to crack each other up that way. And Ned Rifle was one of these recurring boobs, who would show up in my screenplays, and he was in the film, but I cut out any reference to his name because the scenes with him I shot so badly. But also during that year, I was studying the Western film. I had a tutorial to get extra credits by watching a lot of Western films and writing papers on them. So I was, flooded with these Western-sounding names.
We do not know when the revolution will triumph.
We do not know when the revolution will triumph.
But we know that the revolution is with us.
But we know that the revolution is with us.
And there is no doubt that if the revolution is crushed,
and there is no doubt that if the revolution is crushed,
it will be crushed because on this occasion we have been defeated.
It will be crushed because on this occasion we have been defeated.
And never because we have found it useful to compromise.
And never because we have found it useful to compromise.
Listen, Dad, could we talk?
Sit still, Dennis. We will have on events.
We will have on events.
The kind of influence.
The kind of influence.
Which will reflect our numerical strength.
Which will reflect our numerical strength.
Our energy.
Our energy.
Our intelligence.
Our intelligence.
And our intransigence.
And our intransigence.
Even if we are defeated.
Even if we are defeated.
We will have performed a worthy task.
We would have performed a worthy task.
For human progress is measured.
For human progress is measured.
By the persistence and regeneration.
By the persistence and regeneration.
Of selflessness.
Of selflessness.
And a willingness.
And a willingness.
To see beyond the limits of our own time.
To see beyond the limits of our own time.
And if today we fall without compromising.
And if today we fall without compromising.
We can be sure of victory tomorrow.
We can be sure of victory tomorrow.
Well, I think I try to give evidence that I recognize it as part of our shared human experience. But I guess the way to say it is that I deal with politics in human terms rather than dealing with humans in political terms. Where I think, like in Trust, that was much more upfront about it. And it was more like a snafu and Simple Men. It was quite some outrageous thing meant to just underline the relationship of fathers and sons and brothers and stuff. I come from a blue-collar world and appreciated a lot of it, while at the same time feeling I had to get out of there, because little by little you discover who you are and what your desires are and stuff. But yeah, I'm kind of formed by it. And it's stuff that I understand, Like, I try to break things down to try to distill situations and characters and gestures down to something really concrete. And so blue-collar people deal with things. I mean, I'm sure white-collar people deal with things too, but there's something about the imagery of a carpenter who, takes two inanimate objects and nails them together and makes another thing. It's, first of all, it's very much like filmmaking. I pay a lot of attention to it, yeah, certainly. Yeah, and I pay attention to it in the way that anybody who's writing a play or a poem or would pay attention to it. Yeah, pay attention to the rhythm and the melody of what people are saying. However, in the early films, it was all I really had.
I know what you need.
Excuse me?
You need a woman.
Oh?
That girl is crazy.
I know, but I like her.
Yeah, but she's leaving town.
So I've heard.
So come on, what do you say? I know what you need.
Excuse me?
You need a woman.
Oh?
That girl's crazy.
I know, but I like her.
But she's leaving town.
So I've heard.
So come on, what do you say? I know what you need.
Excuse me?
You need a woman.
Oh?
That girl's crazy.
I know, but I like her.
But she's leaving town.
So I've heard.
I don't think I want to lean on it quite as heavily as I have always. This new film I wrote with probably unequaled fervor in that way. But when I was shooting the film, I found myself finding all sorts of opportunities for letting the actors own cadence and understanding of things come in. I often wrote large pieces of it and then took out all the punctuation. You know, so that an actor would really have to find their own way into this block of dialogue, and discovered new things there. I've written a play, the first draft of a play, which will be produced at the Salzburg Opera Festival in Salzburg next year. So that's the first time I've really, since college, really put my hand to something outside of writing a movie. Beyond that, you know, I write, you know, I keep my diaries and my journals, my notebooks all the time. I'm pretty strict about that, but never thought about it, you know. No, I guess not. I never wrote seriously, conscientiously, until I began to write screenplays, because I used to just make these lists of the pictures, you know, and then at a certain point, people started saying things in these films, and I thought, well, maybe I should write down what they say and then describe things, and they got quite involved with it, because I was also learning to edit films at the time, and you know, editing and writing to me are the things that frame the directing. I think if there's some poetic precision to the way I write, it comes from editing. And then my directing benefited from both. I think musically all the time, and I do make music all the time. Again, it's usually been quite simple. It gets more elaborate, more sophisticated as time goes on. I took a music sight reading and notation class last semester at night, at the night school near me, and you know, benefited enormously from it, because you know, 20 years of making music, but the only limitations I had were my confidence in going where I didn't know where I was going, and you know, 12 weeks of careful analysis of harmony and chord structure and stuff like that. It gave me this confidence, and I could say, oh, I'm going there. I can do that. There's no law that says I can't do this. For years, I thought it would be fun. If I make a musical, I'm probably going to make a musical where I also have an interest in making the soundtrack of the movie first. Not just the music, I mean everything. Yeah. Record all the dialogue, the sound effects, and create an oral landscape, a 90-minute track. It's completely done, and then shoot the whole movie like a rock video. And that, yeah, everybody's got to mime things or not mime them, or and I thought that would be a good way to make a musical. I'd like to make a musical somehow in the way that really incorporates the characteristics of the medium You know, it's not about illusion. You know, certainly not about making it look like people are really singing. Yeah, well, you know, we go way back. The first time he shot anybody's film, he shot mine. We were at school together, so our first semester, third year. Most of us were getting to a point where, like we all had to learn everything. We had to learn how to edit and shoot and record sound and stuff and write and direct. But by the beginning of our third year, we began to specialize, I guess, and I knew that I wanted to spend more time with the actors, and Michael was clearly becoming a cameraman, and so we had our first experience together like that, and I think we were drawn to each other for certain things we saw in each other's work. So yeah, it's a push and pull. I mean, it's a nice dynamic. You know, Michael will often, you know, say something like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" Because I benefit a lot from Mike's experience too, because I don't work with anyone else. Mike shoots for many people, and he'll often come back from working with someone else with something he's learned, like, oh, like, let's put this on the lens here, or look at this, you know, I'll tilt up just as she's going out left and create this thing, and so it's a good dynamic. I try to avoid happy and sad endings and reach for true and false endings, and I think my endings strive to be true and not forced, and because I think happiness is a complicated thing. I mean, I think the end of Trust, I think the end of Simple Men, these are not bad endings in a way. They're not, things have worked out the way they probably should work out, and there's possibility.